April 28, 1988. The Hawaiian Islands. Flight 243 is a hop, Hilo to Honolulu, 35 minutes. A flight this airplane makes many times a day, every day. Most of the passengers don't even look up when the seatbelt sign comes on. At 24,000 feet, leveling off, a bang, not an explosion. Witnesses describe it as a whoosh, and then a roar of air inside the cabin. The passengers in the first rows look up. The ceiling is gone. 18 feet of the airplane's roof, from just behind the forward cabin door back to the wings, has torn away. Above them, open sky. The passengers are sitting in a convertible, 6 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean. This is the story of the airplane that landed with its roof missing, and of the tiny, invisible cracks that had been quietly linking up for 19 years, waiting for this exact flight. The airplane was a Boeing 737, 19 years old, flying for Aloha Airlines. Its job was simple: shuttle people between the Hawaiian Islands all day, every day. Hilo, Honolulu, Maui, Kauai. 25 minutes here, 35 minutes there. By 1988, this particular airframe had made almost 90,000 flights. At the time, that was the second highest number of takeoffs and landings of any 737 on Earth. And here is the detail that matters. An airplane doesn't age by years or even by miles. It ages by cycles. One cycle, the cabin pressurizes after takeoff. The fuselage inflates like a balloon, the skin stretching. Then descent, depressurization, the balloon relaxes. Inflate, relax. Inflate, relax. A long-haul jet does that once in 12 hours. An island hopper does it a dozen times a day. Aloha's 737s were being stretched and relaxed more than almost any airplanes in aviation history, while looking on paper like ordinary midlife aircraft. Metal remembers every one of those cycles. Engineers call it fatigue. And on this airplane, fatigue had found a weakness the manufacturer didn't know it had shipped. A 737's aluminum skin comes in panels, joined where they overlap, a lap joint, running the length of the fuselage. In early 737s like this one, those joints were held 2 ways: rows of rivets and glue. A cold-bonded adhesive layer that was supposed to carry most of the pressurization load, spreading it smoothly across the whole joint, keeping the rivets almost unloaded. That was the design on paper. In the factory, the bonding process was hard to get right. In some panels, the adhesive never fully cured. And Hawaii added its own ingredient: warm, humid, salty ocean air, working its way into every seam. Where the glue let go, 2 things happened. Moisture crept into the joint, and corrosion began eating the metal. And the pressurization load the glue should have carried went looking for a new home. It found the rivets. Every rivet hole is a tiny stress concentration, a place where the stretching skin pulls hardest. Load a rivet line 90,000 times, and microscopic cracks begin to grow from the holes. Not one crack, dozens, a whole row of them, each too small to see, growing toward each other, cycle by cycle. Engineers would later give this a name: multiple site damage. Boeing had designed the 737's skin so that a single crack would fail safely. The panel would tear in a small, controlled flap. The cabin would leak instead of burst. But that safety design assumed one crack. Nobody had imagined a whole seam of cracks joining hands. On the morning of April 28, 1988, in the jet bridge at Hilo, one passenger looked at the fuselage and noticed something: a crack in the skin near the door. She boarded anyway. She said nothing to anyone. Flight 243 left Hilo at 1:25 in the afternoon. First Officer Madeline Tompkins was flying. Captain Robert Schornsteimer monitoring. Routine. The airplane climbed through the afternoon sky, and as it leveled at 24,000 feet, the seam gave way. The cracks joined, the panel tore, and instead of a small controlled flap, 18 feet of the upper fuselage peeled off and vanished into the slipstream. The chief flight attendant, Clarabelle Lansing, was standing at row 5. She was swept out of the aircraft. She was never found. Everyone else on board, 89 passengers, 4 remaining crew, was, for the moment, alive, strapped into an airplane with no roof. Picture the situation in the cockpit. The explosive decompression had ripped the cockpit door away. The captain could look back over his shoulder and see, in his own words to investigators, blue sky where the first-class ceiling had been. The wind made it impossible to hear the radio or each other. The airplane was flexing, the floor behind the cockpit visibly moving. Nobody knew if the structure would hold another 5 minutes. They did everything at once. Emergency descent, but carefully. Too fast, and the slipstream could tear the weakened fuselage apart entirely. Divert to the nearest runway, Kahului, on Maui. The radio log preserves the crew's calm. We're going to need assistance. We cannot communicate with the flight attendants. In the cabin, passengers breathing through masks, one flight attendant seriously hurt by debris, another crawling the aisle, keeping people down. 13 minutes. That's how long an airplane that should have broken apart stayed in one piece, because 2 pilots flew it gently enough to let it. On final approach, one more problem. The crew couldn't confirm the nose gear was locked. No time left to troubleshoot. Schornsteimer landed it anyway, smoothly, on Maui, roof or no roof. The gear held. The airplane stopped. 65 people were injured, 8 seriously. One person was lost, Clarabelle Lansing, 37 years an Aloha flight attendant. This episode is, in part, her story. Investigators didn't have to search for the cause. It was written along the torn edge of the fuselage, fatigue cracks radiating from rivet hole after rivet hole, along a lap joint whose bonding had failed years earlier. Corrosion in the seams. Multiple site damage, the failure mode, the safety design couldn't catch. The deeper findings were harder to sit with. The bonding problem wasn't new. Boeing had known cold bond joints could disbond and had issued service bulletins calling for inspections. The inspections were done with human eyes and flashlights on a seam of thousands of rivets, looking for hairline cracks barely a millimeter long, on airplanes that worked all day and were inspected at night. And the fleet age math had quietly gone wrong. The 737 was certified with a design life of around 75,000 flights in mind. This one had passed that number and kept going, legally. At the time, an airplane didn't retire at its design life. It just kept flying, as long as it passed inspection. Nobody had fully asked what happens when the world's airlines operate thousands of jets beyond the lifetime their engineers had imagined. Aloha 243 was the answer. The point of failure on Flight 243 wasn't one bad part. It was an assumption that airplane skin fails one crack at a time, and that human eyes will find that crack first. 90,000 cycles of Hawaiian Air proved both halves wrong at once. What changed afterward changed aviation permanently. The United States created an aging aircraft program, mandatory structural modifications at cycle thresholds, instead of inspect and hope, corrosion prevention programs, research into multiple site damage, new inspection technology that finds cracks no flashlight ever could. Every old airliner flying safely today is flying under rules written because the roof came off this one. The airplane itself never flew again. And in the cabin of every Aloha Airlines aircraft afterward, crews remembered Clarabelle Lansing, the flight attendant who had served these islands since 1951, lost at row 5. One crack was seen that morning in the jet bridge at Hilo by a passenger who told no one. Since Aloha 243, every airline in the world tells you, if you see something on an airplane, say something. They mean it. This is why. Every disaster has a point of failure. Find it, and you understand the whole machine. This has been Point of Failure.